For exposing my siblings' fake will hours after our mom passed away? The oxygen concentrator was still sitting in the hallway, unplugged but not picked up yet. Its gray cord was coiled like somebody had meant to come back and finish the job. There was a half-empty sleeve of paper cups on the counter, a medical folder near the toaster, and a throw blanket on the couch where I had slept for so many months that the cushions had a permanent dip in the shape of my body. Trevor sat in Mom's chair with a yellow legal pad in front of him. Paige stood at the sink stirring coffee she hadn't drunk. Both of them had red eyes, but Trevor's were dry and Paige kept checking her reflection in the dark kitchen window. "We need to be adults about this," Trevor said. Funny because I had been the adult for 18 months. "My name is Natalie. I'm 36, and I work as a claims adjuster for an insurance company. That means I spend most of my day listening to people explain the worst thing that happened to them and trying to stay calm on the phone. I live in an older working-class suburb outside Pittsburgh, the kind of place where people know your car before they know your name, where the sidewalks crack in the same spots every winter, and half the mailboxes have Steelers stickers fading on them. For the last year and a half, though, the most difficult thing in my own life was happening in my mother's spare bedroom. Mom's name was Mary Ann. She was 68, stubborn in the quiet way that made you realize too late she had already decided. Pulmonary fibrosis took her slowly, then all at once. At first, she just got winded going up the split-level stairs. Then she stopped making it to church fish fries because the smell of fried cod made her cough. Eventually, walking from the bed to the bathroom felt to her like crossing a parking lot in July. I moved into her house temporarily when she started needing help at night. Temporary turned into me sleeping on her sagging floral couch, tracking oxygen deliveries on sticky notes, and learning which pharmacy tech at Giant Eagle would actually answer the phone instead of transferring me into a void. I took Teams meetings from the dining room table with a baby monitor beside my laptop. My coworkers saw the same corner of Mom's kitchen behind me for months. Beige wallpaper, a credit union calendar, and a fridge covered in old magnets from places none of us had visited since the 90s. I ate cereal for dinner more often than I want to admit. I forgot laundry in the washer until it smelled sour. I ran out of PTO in March and started taking calls on mute while changing Mom's sheets. My older brother, Trevor, called every other Sunday if the game wasn't on. My younger sister, Paige, sent heart emojis in the family group chat and said things like, "You're so strong, Nat." Strong apparently meant I was the only one changing sheets at 2 a.m. I tried not to resent them at first. Trevor had his contracting business, or what was left of it. He always had an estimate to write, a client to meet, a truck issue, or a guy who owed him money. Paige said hospitals and sickness triggered her anxiety. She lived about 40 minutes away, but she talked like Mom's house was across state lines. Every week I asked for one practical thing. "Can one of you take next Saturday?" I wrote in the group chat one Thursday night after Mom's symptoms were so severe that she couldn't keep her medication down. Trevor replied, "I'll see what I can do." Paige replied, "I wish I could, but my therapist says I need to protect my nervous system. Love you both so much." Saturday came. Neither of them showed up. When people from the neighborhood asked about them, Mom protected them more than they deserved. "Trevor's busy," she would say, pushing the oxygen cannula higher on her nose. "Paige worries too much." I would stand behind her where she couldn't see my face and rinse medication cups in the sink a little harder than necessary. There were moments when she knew exactly what I was swallowing down. One night in January, after an after-hours nurse talked me through administering her pain management medication over the phone, Mom grabbed my wrist with fingers that felt like paper and bone. "Don't let them make you feel crazy," she whispered. I thought she meant after she was gone. I thought she meant grief. I was too tired to understand she meant something had already started. "Who's making me feel crazy?" I asked. She looked toward the hallway, where the house creaked the way old split levels do when the heat kicks on. "Being sick makes people think you stop noticing things," she said. Then she asked me to bring her old metal recipe box from the kitchen cabinet. I had one hand on the cabinet door when Paige called. Mom saw Paige's name light up on my phone and said, "Never mind. Tomorrow." But tomorrow she was worse, and then there was always another thing. A pharmacy delay. A rash under the oxygen tubing. Insurance refusing a portable concentrator until I called 3 times and used the voice I usually save for claimants who thought screaming counted as documentation. The recipe box went back in the cabinet. I forgot about it. Mom passed away before sunrise on a Tuesday. It had been a rough night. She couldn't get comfortable. The snow outside had turned dirty along the curb, and the salt on my boots left white half-moons by the front door. I sat beside her bed in the spare room with the baby monitor unplugged, because there was no point in listening from another room anymore. At 5:18 a.m. her breathing slowed, and she quietly took her final breath. For a few seconds I did nothing. I watched her face, waiting for the next breath because my brain refused to move forward without it. Then I made the necessary calls. The nurse who came was kind and gentle. She told me to take my time, acting like time was something I had not been wrestling with for a year and a half. I texted Trevor and Paige from the hallway. Mom passed at 5:18. Trevor called 11 minutes later. I remember because I was standing near the linen closet staring at a stack of towels I had folded the night before. "Are you sure?" he asked. I closed my eyes. "Yes, Trevor. The nurse is here." He sighed like somebody had given him a bill. "Okay. I'll head over after I make some calls." Paige texted 6 crying emojis and then, "I can't believe this is real." By noon I had spoken to the funeral home, answered questions about cremation because Mom had said she didn't want anybody wasting money on a fancy casket, and started making a list of how many death certificate copies we might need. My hand shook when I tried to spell her middle name for the obituary form. It was the same middle name I had written on school emergency cards as a kid, and suddenly I couldn't remember if it had one N or two. At 5:30 that evening, Trevor and Paige arrived at the same time. Trevor came in carrying a folder. Paige came in carrying a tray of coffees from Starbucks like this was a hospital waiting room, and we had all agreed to pretend caffeine was comfort. She hugged me first. Her perfume hit me before her arms did. "Oh, Nat, you look exhausted." I almost laughed. "I am exhausted." Trevor patted my shoulder, then looked past me into the living room. The medical bed was still there, stripped down to the plastic mattress cover. The oxygen tubing curled beside it in a clear pile. "They haven't picked that up?" he asked. "No," I said. "They're coming tomorrow." "That's good," he said, though I couldn't figure out what was good about it. We sat at the kitchen table because that was where everything had happened for months. It was the center for medication charts, late-night soup, mail sorting, paperwork, and me crying silently over an insurance spreadsheet while Mom slept in the next room. Trevor opened the folder. "I know this is a lot," he said, "but we need to get ahead of things. Houses don't sell overnight and the market is still decent around here. I know a realtor who handled Dennis Harrow's place after his dad died." I stared at him. "Mom passed away 12 hours ago," I said. Paige wrapped both hands around her coffee. "No one is trying to rush you." Trevor slid the yellow legal pad toward the middle of the table. On it he had written a realtor's name, a phone number, and 3 bullet points. "House, accounts, will. We're just trying to be practical," he said. "Mom would want things split evenly. She always said that." I am not discussing Mom's house while her bed is still in the living room. Trevor's jaw moved once. "Nobody's stealing anything, Nat. I'm trying to keep this from turning into a mess." "Then maybe don't start with a realtor." Paige made a small hurt sound. "Can we not fight? Mom would hate this." Mom would have hated a lot of things, including Paige using her name as a potholder so nobody had to touch anything hot. I got up and put Paige's untouched coffee in the fridge because I needed to do something with my hands. Trevor watched me like I was being difficult on purpose. "Do you have the will?" he asked. "No. You lived here." "That doesn't mean I memorized every drawer." "You had access to everything." There it was. Not even a full day, and the shape of it was already clear. Paige looked down at her phone. A second later, Aunt Caroline's name flashed across my screen. Mom's older sister. I let it go to voicemail because I knew exactly who had called her. Her message came 3 minutes later, soft and careful. "Honey, I heard there's some confusion about paperwork. Grief makes people cling to things. Just don't make this harder than it has to be, okay? Your brother and sister are hurting too." I stood in the hallway with my phone in my hand, looking at the unplugged oxygen machine, and felt something inside me go very still. They had called relatives before they helped me write the obituary. The next morning, I went through Mom's desk looking for the funeral home paperwork. Her desk was in the basement, beside storage bins full of Christmas decorations and old tax returns. The basement always smelled faintly like laundry detergent and dust. I had a mug of coffee balanced on a paint-stained shelf and a list in my pocket. Obituary approval, cremation authorization, death certificates, call oxygen supplier, and cancel meal delivery. Mom kept bills in neat folders. Electric, gas, Medicare, credit union. She wrote the due dates on the envelopes in pencil even after everything went automatic. In the back of the bottom drawer, behind a folder labeled Appliance Manuals, I found another folder I had never seen before. Inside was a document with a notary stamp and Mom's signature at the bottom. Her signature looked shaky, but it was hers. The date was from the previous October, a Wednesday. I remembered that week because my manager had denied my PTO request, and I had taken calls from the dining room while Mom napped. The document referenced a home equity line of credit. Mom had never mentioned a home equity line of credit to me. I read it twice, slower the second time. My stomach started to feel hollow. There were words about authorization, account access, and property-related expenses. Trevor's name appeared once as a permitted contact. I stood there in the basement, the dryer humming behind me, and said out loud to no one, "Mom, what did they have you sign?" That afternoon, Trevor called while I was on hold with the funeral home about the obituary wording. I ignored him. He called again. Then he left a voicemail. "Nat, I don't appreciate being shut out. Mom had assets including the house and that line of credit, and we all have a right to know what's going on. Call me back." I replayed the voicemail 3 times. That line of credit. Not the line of credit. That line of credit. I had not told him what I found. The next day, after the medical company finally picked up the equipment, I carried a bag of trash to the curb. Art from next door was on his porch, wearing a flannel jacket and one of those knit caps old men seem to own in bulk. He had lived beside Mom for almost 30 years. His real name was Arthur, but everyone called him Art, and he had shoveled Mom's front steps without being asked after every snow. "You holding up?" he asked. I gave the answer people expect. "I'm doing okay." He nodded like he didn't believe me but respected the lie. I hesitated, then said, "Art, did Trevor come by much when I wasn't here?" His eyes shifted to the driveway. "More than you probably know." My hand tightened around the trash bag. "When?" "Weekdays mostly. Your car would be gone. His truck would pull in for 20 or 30 minutes. Sometimes Paige was with him. He told me he barely had time to call." Art's mouth pressed flat. "Your mom asked me to save those clips from my porch camera. Didn't tell me why. Just said if I saw Trevor's truck when you weren't home, keep it." The trash bag slipped against my leg. "She asked you that?" "Back in the fall." He looked uncomfortable, like he hated being dragged into family business but hated worse what he had seen. "I got them on a flash drive. I can bring it over." I thanked him and my voice sounded normal, which felt strange because nothing inside me did. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay on the couch under the same throw blanket I had used during Mom's last month and listened to the refrigerator click on and off. Around midnight I got up to clean because grief had made the house too loud. I started with the freezer. Mom had always saved bones for soup. Ham bones, turkey backs, and chicken carcasses wrapped in freezer bags and labeled with blue painter's tape. It was the kind of habit that came from growing up with not enough money and then never fully trusting having enough later. I pulled out containers of soup I had made and forgotten, a bag of peas frosted into one green brick, and a freezer bag labeled ham bone. It felt too light. Inside was no ham bone. There was a manila envelope wrapped in another plastic bag. On the front, in Mom's careful handwriting, it said, "Nat, read alone." I sat on the kitchen floor because my knees stopped being useful. The first page was a note. "Nat, if they are rushing you, that means I was right. Do not sign anything Trevor gives you. Do not meet with him alone. Do not let Paige cry you into agreeing just to make peace. Call Vivian Price before you discuss the estate with anyone. I am sorry I did not tell you sooner. I was ashamed I let them confuse me. Your mother was sick. She was not stupid." I pressed the paper to my chest and made a sound I had not made when she died. It wasn't pretty. It came from somewhere low and ugly, grief mixed with relief and anger, and the awful comfort of realizing I had not imagined the air changing in the room whenever Trevor talked about practical matters. The envelope held bank statements, copies of checks, printed screenshots from Mom's credit union account, and a business card for Vivian Price, attorney at law. There was also a handwritten list of dates. Besides several of them, Mom had written, "Trevor came while Nat at work. Asked about bills." Paige said this would simplify everything. Felt wrong after. There were ATM withdrawals from a gas station near Trevor's shop. Venmo requests from Paige for Mom Pharmacy that did not match any pharmacy receipt I had ever seen. A copy of the notarized document from the basement with a yellow sticky note in Mom's handwriting. I thought this was only for paying bills. Why does T keep saying house money? I called Vivian Price at 8:02 the next morning. I had not slept. My hair was in the same knot from the day before, and I was wearing one of Mom's old cardigans over my pajama shirt because the house felt cold without her breathing in it. A receptionist answered, and when I said my name, she put me through so fast I knew Vivian had been waiting. "Natalie," Vivian said. Her voice was calm and low. "First, I am sorry about Marianne. She was very fond of you." I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. "You knew my mom? I represented your mother. Did Trevor mention selling the house yet?" I closed my eyes. He had a realtor's number 12 hours after she passed away. Vivian exhaled through her nose, not surprised, just disappointed. "Do not sign anything. Do not agree to any meeting without me. And do not hand over original documents. Your mother anticipated pressure." "What did she do?" "She revoked her prior will 6 months ago. She executed a new estate plan. The house was handled separately through a recorded transfer on death arrangement naming you as beneficiary, with supporting documents in my file. Her modest savings are addressed in the will. Trevor and Paige receive specific personal items and no share of the house proceeds because there are no house proceeds to split." I had to sit down. The word beneficiary did not feel like winning. It felt like someone had put a lock on a door just before people with crowbars arrived. "She never told me," I said. "She was afraid you would try to talk her into being fair," Vivian said. Her word, not mine. "She said you had been trained to accept crumbs and call it peace." That landed so hard I had to look at the ceiling. Vivian continued. "Your mother also documented concerns about unauthorized activity. Some of what she gave me may support a claim for elder financial exploitation. I am not saying that lightly. What do I do? You stop arguing on the phone. You communicate in writing. You keep records. You let them put their demands where we can preserve them." So that was what I did. I made a folder on my laptop called Estate. Do not delete. Then I made subfolders. Care, pharmacy, bills paid, texts, bank, art camera, and funeral. I scanned Giant Eagle receipts, oxygen invoices, my own bank statements showing transfers I had made to cover Mom's medication when her card got declined, and the care notebook I had kept beside her bed. That notebook was not pretty. It had coffee rings on it and one page where I had written "Call Pharmacy." So hard the pen tore through. But it showed dates, times, medication doses, nurse calls, oxygen settings, symptoms, and every day I had been there. Art brought over the flash drive in an envelope from an old electric bill. "I don't want trouble," he said at the door. "I know. But your mom was a good woman. And you were here. People should remember who was here." I cried after he left, but only for a minute. Then I copied the files to my laptop and sent them to Vivian. Trevor hated the new version of me almost immediately. He called twice. I did not answer. Paige texted, "Can we please talk like normal people? This email thing feels cold." I wrote back, "Please send any estate-related questions by email." Trevor left a voicemail that started controlled and ended loud. "You don't get to run the whole show because you chose to play nurse. We all lost our mother. You need to stop hoarding information." I saved it. Then he moved to the family group chat where Aunt Caroline, 2 cousins, Paige, and I could all see him perform reasonableness. "Trevor, I hate doing this here, but Natalie refuses to communicate. We need transparency on Mom's assets." Paige, "I just don't want Mom's wishes ignored. She loved all of us." Aunt Caroline, "Girls, boys, please. Your mother would want peace." Trevor, "Peace requires honesty." I sat at the kitchen table, where Mom's pill organizer still sat empty near the salt shaker, and typed slowly. Me. The funeral home appointment is at 3 p.m. Estate questions can be sent by email. Trevor replied within seconds. Trevor. Convenient. I did not answer. My thumb hovered, but I put the phone face down and made toast I didn't want. The funeral was small, just like Mom wanted. Cremation, no open casket. A short service in the church basement because the sanctuary stairs would have annoyed her on principle. There were coffee urns, sheet cake, and people telling me how peaceful she looked even though most of them had not seen her in months. Paige cried into a napkin when a woman from Mom's old bowling league said, "You girls must have taken such good care of her." I watched Paige accept that sentence like a gift. Trevor shook hands like he was running for township supervisor. He told people, "We're figuring things out," in a grave voice. When Aunt Caroline hugged me, she whispered, "Try not to be defensive, honey. It makes people worry." I was too tired to explain that people often call you defensive when you stop handing them weapons. 2 days after the funeral, Trevor demanded a family meeting. His email was almost impressive. Natalie, since you will not speak openly, Paige and I believe a meeting with Aunt Caroline present is necessary. We need to review Mom's will, bank accounts, house value, and any paperwork you may have removed from the home. This is not an accusation. It is about fairness. Trevor. I forwarded it to Vivian. She replied 8 minutes later. Agree. Saturday at 10. I will attend. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I wrote Trevor back. Saturday at 10 works. I will have someone with me. His response came fast. Who? I didn't answer. Saturday morning was cold and bright. The snow piles along the driveway had hardened into gray crusts. I salted the front steps because Mom would have haunted me if Aunt Caroline slipped. I put a pot of coffee on because manners are harder to kill than resentment. Trevor arrived first, carrying the same folder from the day Mom passed away. Paige arrived behind him in leggings and a cream sweater, holding a box of grocery store muffins. Aunt Caroline came last, cheeks pink from the cold, eyes already worried. Let's keep this civil, she said before taking off her coat. That's what I've been trying to do, Trevor said. I poured coffee and said nothing. At 10:03, Vivian Price knocked on the front door. She was in her mid-50s with a dark wool coat, silver reading glasses, and the posture of someone who had ended many arguments without raising her voice. She carried 3 folders and a leather bag. Trevor stood halfway up when she entered. Why is there a lawyer here? I looked at him. Because you brought paperwork to Mom's deathbed. Paige's mouth fell open. That's not fair. Vivian set her folders on the kitchen table. Good morning. I represented Marianne in her estate planning. Natalie asked me to attend because this discussion involves legal documents. Trevor's face changed. Not much. Just enough. We don't need lawyers to divide our mother's things, he said. Then this should be brief, Vivian replied. We sat. Same kitchen table. Same credit union calendar on the wall. But for the first time since Mom got sick, I did not feel like the only person in the room expected to absorb everyone else's discomfort. Trevor started with the speech he had clearly practiced. Look, nobody wants a fight. But Natalie lived here, controlled access to Mom, handled her medications, handled her mail, and now she suddenly won't share paperwork. We have concerns. Paige looked down and sniffed. Trevor continued. Mom always wanted everything equal. There's an old will. I have a copy. Splits everything 3 ways. If there's some new document, we need to know how that happened and whether Mom even understood what she was signing. Aunt Caroline looked at me with pity that felt too much like suspicion. Natalie, she said gently, your mother was very dependent on you. Sometimes that affects decisions. My face got hot, but I kept my hands wrapped around my coffee mug. Vivian opened the first folder. I'm going to stop you there, she said. Marianne revoked the document you are referring to 6 months ago. She executed a new will in my office after a private consultation. I personally assessed her capacity to make those decisions. She knew the nature of her property, her family relationships, and the consequences of her choices. Trevor leaned back. Of course she did. After Natalie got in her ear. Natalie was not present, Vivian said. Marianne arranged transportation through a neighbor. I met with her alone. My assistant witnessed the signing. The notary was ours. Paige wiped under one eye. We just want what Mom wanted. Vivian looked at her. Excellent. Let's discuss what Marianne put in writing. The room went quiet except for the refrigerator humming. Vivian laid out copies, not originals. She was careful about that. A revoked prior will. A new will. The recorded property transfer documents. A letter from Mom, witnessed and dated, explaining that I had provided continuous care, and that she did not want the house sold out from under me or converted into cash by people who had not carried the responsibility of her care. Trevor's ears went red. This is ridiculous, he said. She's punishing us for having lives. I almost said something then. My mouth opened. But Vivian had told me not to rescue them from silence, so I closed it. Vivian opened the second folder. The question is not whether Natalie influenced Marianne, she said. The question is why Trevor had access to Marianne's account on dates he said he wasn't visiting, and why several transactions appear inconsistent with Marianne's medical condition and spending habits. Aunt Caroline sat straighter. What transactions? Vivian placed bank statements on the table. Highlighted lines showed withdrawals. 200 here. 500 there. A transfer labeled household repair, though no repair invoice existed. A check made out to Trevor's business for ramp materials, when the aluminum ramp on Mom's front steps had been provided by a care agency and returned after she died. Trevor pointed at the papers. I bought things for her. With no receipts? Vivian asked. I don't keep every receipt from every errand. I reached into my folder and slid over a stack of my own receipts. Pharmacy copays. Protein drinks. Supplies. Gas for driving to appointments. A printed credit card statement showing the day I paid for Mom's portable pulse oximeter, because insurance wouldn't cover that model. I kept mine, I said. Paige stared at the table. Vivian opened the third folder. Marian also provided a written statement indicating that Trevor and Paige presented her with an authorization document they described as temporary help for paying bills. She later observed account activity she did not understand and became concerned. That's not what happened, Trevor snapped. Vivian's voice stayed flat. Then you can explain the notary document. He looked at Paige. It was quick, but everyone saw it. Aunt Caroline did too. Her face lost its softness. Paige, she said. Paige's breathing changed. I didn't know it was like that. Trevor hissed. Don't. Vivian turned to Paige. We also have porch camera footage from several weekdays showing Trevor's truck in the driveway while Natalie was at work or running errands. Those visits correspond to dates Marianne listed in her notes. Trevor pushed back from the table. So now neighbors are spying? Your mother asked him to save the clips, I said. That was the first time I saw real fear on his face. Paige started crying for real then, messy and panicked, not the soft funeral crying that made people bring tissues. Trevor said it wasn't stealing, she said. The kitchen seemed to shrink around us. Trevor stood. Paige, shut up. Aunt Caroline slapped her palm on the table so hard Paige jumped. Do not talk to your sister like that in Marianne's house. Paige covered her mouth, then kept going because panic had opened the door and guilt was running out. He said Mom owed us anyway. He said the house would be split later, and it didn't matter if some money moved early. I only helped with the one paper because he said it would make bills easier. Mom was tired, and she trusted us, and I didn't think. Her voice broke. Vivian said, You didn't think what? Paige looked at the bank statements. I didn't think it was stealing if we were going to inherit anyway. Nobody spoke. Aunt Caroline looked at Trevor like she was seeing a stranger wearing her nephew's face. You took from her while she was struggling? She asked. Trevor's expression hardened again, but it was too late. His practical man mask had slipped, and what was underneath was ugly and small. Don't act holy, he said. Natalie got a free place to live for 18 months. I laughed once. I couldn't help it. It sounded sharp. Free, I said. I slept on a couch beside a baby monitor while Mom suffered through severe pain. I answered nurse calls at 3 a.m. I worked with my laptop on the washing machine because the Wi-Fi was better in the basement. I paid for medication when her card declined because somebody was helping themselves to her account. Don't call that free. Trevor grabbed his folder. Vivian did not move. Before you leave, you should understand the next steps. My office has prepared a demand for repayment of the unauthorized transactions we can document. If you cooperate, this can remain a civil matter for now. If you do not, the phrase you will be hearing is financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Trevor froze with his hand on the back of the chair. Vivian continued. You can discuss this with counsel. I recommend you do. But you will not harass Natalie. You will not enter this house without written permission. And you will not represent to relatives that she stole an inheritance your mother legally removed from your reach after documenting your conduct. Paige was sobbing quietly. Aunt Caroline looked like she wanted to be sick. Trevor left without another word. His truck engine revved too hard in the driveway, then faded down the street. Paige stayed. For once she did not look delicate. She looked caught. I'm sorry, she said to me. I looked at her, and all I could think about was Mom signing something she didn't understand while Paige stood there making it sound safe. Not today, I said. She nodded like she deserved worse, which she did, and Aunt Caroline drove her home. After everyone left, I sat alone at the kitchen table until the coffee went cold. The house was quiet in a way it had not been in months. No oxygen machine. No nurse pulling into the driveway. No Mom calling my name from the spare bedroom. No Trevor saying we needed to be adults while acting like grief was a closing window on a real estate deal. I found the equipment pickup receipt on the counter. On the back of it, without really thinking, I wrote, bedroom paint warm green. Then I put my face in my hands and cried. Not because I had one. That word never fit. I cried because Mom had been scared and sick, and still had to spend some of her last strength protecting me from her own children. I cried because part of me wished she had been wrong. I cried because she had known me well enough to know I might let them take from me just to keep the peace. I'm sorry it got so ugly, Mom, I said to the empty room. The house gave its old settling creak in answer. The aftermath was slower than people imagine. No one got dragged away in handcuffs from the kitchen. Trevor hired a lawyer, then stopped bluffing when Vivian's office sent copies of the bank records, Mom's notes, the notary document, and the porch camera timestamps. He agreed to a repayment schedule because the alternative was uglier and more public than he could afford. The contracting business was already in bad shape. After word got around, and in that suburb it always did, people stopped calling him back. Not because I posted anything online. I didn't have to. Aunt Caroline stopped protecting him at family events, and that was enough. Paige cooperated. Vivian said that mattered. I said fine. Paige was cut out of the estate except for the one thing Mom had specifically left her. A ceramic robin Paige had painted at a school art fair when she was 7. Mom had kept it on the windowsill over the sink for 26 years, even after one wing chipped. Paige texted me a picture of it sitting on her apartment shelf. Paige, I know I don't deserve this. I did not answer for 3 days. When I finally did, I wrote, take care of it. That was all I had in me. Aunt Caroline came over 2 weeks after the meeting with a casserole and swollen eyes. She stood in the entryway twisting her gloves. I owe you an apology, she said. I let her say it. The old me would have rushed to make her feel better. The new me waited. I believed them because it was easier than thinking your mother's own children would do that, she said. And because you were the calm one, I assumed you were hiding something. That wasn't fair. No, I said. It wasn't. She nodded. I'm sorry, Natalie. I accepted the casserole. I accepted the apology too, but I did not hand her my trust like a receipt. In March, I cleared out the spare bedroom. That was harder than the legal mess in some ways. Paperwork gives you lines and signatures and dates. A sick room gives you indentations in the carpet where equipment stood. A drawer full of things you don't need anymore. Pillowcases washed soft from use, and a silence that keeps rearranging itself. I packed Mom's nightgowns into one bin, her books into another. I kept her recipe box. Inside, between a card for lemon bars and one for ham and bean soup, I found a folded scrap of paper with my name on it. Just 3 words. Hold your ground. I sat on the floor for a long time with that paper in my hand. Then I painted the room warm green. I bought a rail bed, not expensive, just mine. The first night I slept in that room, I woke up at 2:11 a.m. already reaching for the baby monitor that was not there. My heart pounded like I had missed a dose, a call, or a breath. Then I remembered. The room smelled like paint and clean sheets. The window looked out over Art's porch light and the cracked driveway. Downstairs, the couch sat empty for the first time in 18 months. I still work insurance claims from the dining room table, but now I take lunch sitting down. I put Mom's credit union calendar in a drawer. I kept the ceramic magnets on the fridge. I replaced the medical folder with a bowl of oranges because Mom always said a kitchen should look like someone expects tomorrow. Trevor and I do not speak. Paige sends a careful text every few months, usually on holidays, and I answer only when I have something honest to say. Aunt Caroline comes by sometimes, and she no longer tells me what Mom would have wanted unless she is quoting something Mom actually wrote. I kept the house but not as a prize. It still has beige siding, a narrow driveway, a basement that smells like dust and detergent, and pipes that knock when the heat comes on. It is not a mansion. It is not a jackpot. It is the place where I did the work nobody wanted to see until there was something to divide. Mom made sure they could not turn my love into their payday. So I changed the locks, painted the room, slept in the bed, and stopped apologizing for surviving the part of the story they skipped. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.